with your hosts Tom Whittle and Ger Dooley. Your ticket to the home of aviation podcasts.
It's Sunday night, and you know what that means. A very good evening, everybody, or morning or afternoon, depending on where, of course, you are watching from. And welcome to what is episode 7 of the Departure Lounge podcast. My name, as you know, is Tom Whittle, and joining me this evening, of course, is my co-host, Ger Dooley. Ger, welcome to episode 7.
Episode 7, Tom. Exactly. Now you said it, and a very good evening to you, my good friend, as well.
How are we doing?
And to everybody out there in the chat as well, a very good evening to you all as well. And I've been great for him, thanks, Tom, after being a pretty busy week, as I say.
Yes.
And yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad myself. It's like same again. It's been a busy week and that. So preparing for this for this episode. So yeah. Apart from that, I'm all good. And I hope everyone that is joining us is as well. Now, what we'll do, as we normally do before we kickstart the whole podcast, we'll go into a little bit of housekeeping. So, top of the screen, for those that watch regularly now, you have our social media usernames and handles to either follow us or subscribe on YouTube. You can see those on the top of the bar. Also, you can also see at the bottom of the bottom of the screen, rather. If you wish to, at some point in the future, become a guest on the podcast, all you got to do is drop us a message. Let us know what you want to talk about, and we'll be more than happy to bring you on and talk aviation for about an hour or over an hour. Also, I didn't do this last week, but I'm going to do it this week because I remembered. A big nudge in the direction of the channel's sponsors, which is airspotters.com. They've been helping me out on my videos now for a while, and for me, it's probably the best website, and I'm not just saying that for anybody that collects model aircraft. Definitely worth checking them out. They've got some really good models on there for some really good prices. And apart from that, I think that's it. The only other bit of housekeeping to do, last week we had Ian Hartley on, who was in to specifically read comments out. Big response for that. And we did plan to have him back this evening to do the same thing and read the comments out. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it this evening. So we'll just do a very early shout out to Ian, and hopefully we'll have him back next week.
Big shout out, Dean.
Yeah, but for now, that's pretty much all the shout outs. I'll get there eventually. All of the housekeeping that that needs to be done. Now also, we normally go into a new segment, but because of the guests that we have on this week, we are again scrapping that. So what we're going to do, we're going to jump into bringing the guest on. So, Joe, are you ready?
I'm as ready as I ever be, Tom.
Let's get into it.
Let's go.
This week's special guest.
Would like to introduce
Karlene.
Karlene.
Hold on.
Oh. Sorry,
Hold on.
Tom.
Hold on. We played the jingle.
Sorry.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I've done that now, so it's fine. It's all right.
Good.
So this week's guest. This week's guest is an international pilot, having flown under 8 airlines, including the likes of Northwest, Braniff, and Tower Air, to name a few. She also has 7 type ratings, including the Boeing 727, the 747, and the Airbus A350, to mention a few. She has degrees in aviation and is a best-selling author of aviation thrillers, and currently flies around in an Airbus A350. Of course, it's none other than Karlene Petitt. Karlene, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me, Tom.
Not a problem. How are you doing today?
Andrew, nice to see you guys. I'm
Very good
doing
evening,
great. Thanks.
Karlene. Very good evening.
How are you doing today?
I am doing absolutely wonderful this morning.
Fantastic. Of course, it's morning for you and sort of the end of the day for us over here. So, So yeah, it's weird to know that we're about to finish the day and you're starting it. But of course, over across the pond, it is of course Mother's Day as well. So we both of us here wish you a happy Mother's Day.
Well, happy Mother's Day, yeah.
Thank you very much.
No
You're
problem
very welcome.
at all. Before we get into the interview segment, we'll just say hello to a few people in the chat. If you have any questions for Karlene this evening, throw them into the chat and we will get them read out as and when they sort of come through, really. So a couple of names to mention. We've got Bradley Penny Aviation. Hello to you. We also have Leo911 who watches regularly, so good evening to you. Jeremy Carlisle, hello to you. I'm probably going to butcher the name. Ayush Pranav as well says hi Karlene, so hello to you as well.
Big shout out to you all there.
Yes.
Hey, hi everybody.
So yeah, so if you want to, like I said, I'll go over it again. Anybody that wants to ask any questions to Karlene, throw them in the chat. We'll go from there. But yes, let's start with sort of the some of the questions that we have here. So first off, when did you sort of decide that you wanted to kind of get into the aviation industry?
That would be when I was 9 years old, and only because I was playing this game with my girlfriends, and it was called Careers. And back in the day, it was a board game for girls. And the careers were, you could be a hostess. That just kind of dates it how long ago it was. So for all you really young people, a hostess is our current day flight attendant. That was back in the day. So you could be a hostess, a librarian, a school teacher, a nurse, and so pretty much, or a teacher. So pretty much traditional female jobs. Yeah. And so all my girlfriends wanted to get on the hostess spot. Everyone wanted to be a hostess, and they all got on that spot, and I couldn't get on the spot. So I finally just said, fine, I don't care. I'm going to be the pilot anyway. And my girlfriend, whose dad was a pilot for, oh gosh, we'll just leave the name of the airline off. She said, my dad said, girls can't be pilots. And I said, yes, they can. She goes, no, girls cannot do that. My dad says he's a pilot. He says girls can't do it. And I said, yes, they can. No, they can't. And then we got in this big argument, and I kicked everybody out. And I went up and asked my mom if I could be a pilot. And she says, you can do whatever you want, but get out of my kitchen. I'm making dinner. And so that's how it kind of started. I was going to be a pilot because I was told that I could not do it. And that kind of became my thing.
So it's almost like you wanted to prove
and then
wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just kept telling everyone I was going to do it. And then finally I kind of had to prove myself because it's another personality. As if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And so then when I was 16, I was quite 16 years old, and I went out to the airport and I took my first introductory flight. So I was working and saving money and mowing lawns and babysitting and doing whatever I could to save money, because I knew becoming a pilot, I was going to need to have money to pay for lessons. And so then when I was 16, I borrowed a car, went to the airport and said, I want to be a pilot. So they told me, okay, we've got to give you your, do an introductory flight. And so back then, I think I paid like $15 is all to go do an introductory flight. And we walked around the airplane, and the instructor kicked the tires and looked at the wings, and he was telling me about all the components. We got out there, and he taxied out, and he got us on the runway, and he says, okay, you've got it. And I said, I don't have it. And he goes, no, you've got it. I go, I can't fly. I don't know how to fly. He says, I'm going to show you. And so he let me do this takeoff. He let me add the power and showed me how to use the rudders for directional control and when to pull the nose off. And I rotated and I was flying, and I thought, wow, they're going to pay me to do this? And so I was hooked. And so then I got in my car, and the next thing I went to a career counselor's office at my high school and said, I want to be a pilot. And she told me that I couldn't be a pilot. I said, why not? She says, girls can't do that. You have to go into the military to be a pilot, and they won't let girls in the military. And I go, flying airplanes. And I go, oh, okay. So then I went back out to the airport and said, what do I need to do to become a pilot? And long story short on that is, give us all your money and we'll teach you how to fly. So that's actually how it started. So
Fantastic.
Yeah. So the story of my life, everybody's telling you couldn't. And actually, I was really on the borderline of I could have when I graduated high school, because I was 16. So 3 years later, graduating high school, it was just around the time they were starting to let women fly.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I could have gone that path, but I was told no, you can't do it. I figured out another way to do it. Just go to the airport, give them money, and take lessons. So
yeah, give them the money and go here. Go. I'll show you.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Joe, do you want to get on with the next one?
Yeah. So your first aircraft then, Karlene. What was the first ever aircraft that you got behind the controls of?
That would be a Cessna 172. And the reason is normally they stick in a Cessna 152, and we tried that. But let's just say I was about 5'12" before I started getting older and settling. And so all my height is in my legs. And so there was not a lot of room in the 152. We had the seat all the way back. And so we just decided, let's just go to the 172 and go from there. So that's the aircraft I actually learned in and got my pilot's license in.
So was the leg space actually in the cockpit, like very, very tight, like sitting into it, like?
It was. It's a small cockpit. It's actually a really good trainer, though, because the smaller the airplane, you're going to get more, it's a really good trainer. It just wasn't quite conducive to that. And then when I was getting my commercial instrument, actually my commercial and my instrument, I was pregnant with daughter number 1, pregnant with daughter number 2. So, and then there was no way we were fitting it. I mean, even the controls I had all the way back to, I remember my the FA inspector who was flying with me. He was a little nervous because I was very, very pregnant with one of these type rides. And he just kept it was really a short check ride. And so then the second time, the next one I'm out there for another check ride, it's the same guy and I'm pregnant again. And he's looking at me and I started laughing and I said, yeah, I know how to get an easy check ride. You just want to get back on the ground before I give birth. And he just laughed. He thought that was funny. But yeah, there was there was no way I'd be in a small airplane with that controls trying to pull that back. So
yeah.
Yeah.
God, that's fantastic. Wow. Tom, do you want to go to the next one?
Yes. So, obviously, leading on from the first aircraft that you took control of, in the introduction, I sort of briefly mentioned a little bit of your sort of flying history. Would you be able to sort of give a brief summary of sort of the airlines that sort of you went on to fly for?
Yeah. So I'm in high school, I'm building my flight time, then I go to college, having my kids, because I figured that once I got on with the airline, I wanted a family, and I probably wouldn't, when do you quit? When you first get hired, when you get a captain. So I kind of was college, kids, all at the same time, and then it's time to go out and get a job. And I went out to SeaTac Airport, and back in the day, this is how you got a job. You took your resume and you walked up to the counter where they sell the tickets and you give it to them. and I walked through and so there was a little commuter out there called Coastal Airways. And Coastal Airways was out in Sequim, Washington, and they competed with San Juan Airlines. And it turns out that the owner was a Braniff captain, and he had 4 sons, and they're all pilots now. And so I went out there and I said, I'm interested in coming to work for you guys. And the phone rang and she's talking to somebody and she says, here, owner wants to talk to you. And this guy gets on the phone and he says, so tell me why you want to come work for us. And I said, to put San Juan Airlines out of business, of course. And he just laughed. He thought that was funny. He says, okay, you're hired. And so I flew the Cessna 402s with them. And I did a lot of instructing for a couple of their sons who are getting their training. And so it was really a nice job to be able to do with the kids were really small. And then I was getting a flight engineer rating, which was required to go to any airline in the day. Back in the day, you had to have one. And so I was over at this training center doing that, and I didn't know anything about engineering. And I show up in the class and they're talking about a bus, and electrical bus, and I'm picturing, the yellow school bus with the wheels. It's like, because I had never done this before. So I went in and took this engineering class, and and was getting the training. And so I'd go home, put the kids to bed. I went back and I said, Evergreen was training. I said, hey guys, do you mind if I observe? And I'm going to be getting an engineer ticket. It's 727. I said, just to watch what you're doing. They said, sure, come on in. So I sat in the back and watched they were doing a captain, first officer check ride, and had a flight engineer. And I watched for a couple days. And then the third day I went out there, they had a different crew. And they said, sure, you're invited to come in. And it turned out they had professional engineers. But he didn't show up. And so I said, hey, I can do it for you. And, it's like, I don't have a rating, but I can sit in the seat and read the checklist because I've watched for 2 days and now I know what I'm doing. Yeah. And they said, okay. And it turned out it was one of the chief pilots down at Evergreen. And so I went in there and ran the checklist for them. And so they were able to finish do their training. In hindsight, I don't know if that was technically legal on their part to have an unqualified flight engineer doing the check ride, but I figure it was a chief pilot and, his check ride. So they were just checking them, but we did it and they passed. And so it was about a couple months later, they contacted and asked the owner if I ever got my ticket. And they said, yeah. So my first airline job was, they said, hey, we're going to see if you can fly an airplane, because we definitely, know you could pass the training if you recently did this. Yeah. And like I said, they had professional flight engineers, which are different from the airlines where they used to call them second officers. A second officer worked at the panel like a flight engineer, but a flight engineer was traditionally a mechanic and was not necessarily a pilot, where a second officer is. So most of the major airlines with passengers had second officers so they could upgrade to the other seats. So Evergreen did not. So they were hiring me in the right seat of a 727. And they came out and gave me a little mini check ride to see if I could fly the airplane, which I could. And we're going to give a shout out to Captain Bo Corby, because he actually said, he's the one that set this up. And he said, yeah, she got her training. And he calls me up and said, hey, come on out. I'm going to teach you how to fly a 727. And he did, and so it was pretty awesome. So I went out and passed the little check ride they did. And so I flew for Evergreen on the 727. And then I had my big career move to Braniff. And so I left Evergreen to go fly passengers for Braniff. And I actually at the time could have gone to the right seat on the 747 or to Braniff. And I thought, I'll go do this, instead of doing night freight. So I went to Braniff, and then they filed bankruptcy. Yeah. And so I was on the street. And now in the meantime, with all this going on, I was also working for another company called Prem Air. And I'm trying to think if Prem Air was around the Braniff days. Yeah, it was, because I was instructing over at another company on my days off, doing type raids and check raids and training on 757 and the 737. But I'm a flight engineer at Braniff. So they shut down, and the chief pilot from there goes to America West and then calls me and asks me if I want to come and fly for America West, or be an instructor for America West. Actually, I think I called down there and asked him if he could get me a flying job, is what happened. He laughed. And I asked him why he was laughing. He says, because all my good buddies from Braniff are calling me up and saying, hey, what are you doing now? Everyone knew he was there. They were just trying to get a job, but they weren't honest with it. I called them up and just said, hey, can you get me a job? Well, then he called back and said, would you mind being an instructor? And it was a non-seniority list job where you're teaching other pilots who would be well ahead of you, and you're locked in for 2 years. But with the kids at their ages at that time, it worked perfect. I could go down, sometimes just fly down to Arizona and back. Yeah. So I instructed, I was dual qualified in the 7.3 and 757. And then I was working for another company, which America West got the contract also for Guyana Airways. And they got the simulator contract. And the other company I was working for on the side, Premier, they got the expat contract. And I was working for both. And so long story short on that, Guyana Airways ended up stealing me away from America West, because while I was there, just about my 2-year point where I could go apply and get on the flight line, they filed bankruptcy. And everyone up through my line, up through my seniority was furloughed, I still had a job because I was teaching.
Yeah.
And at that point, I stayed there for 4 years, and I thought, it's time to move on. So I went to Guyana Airways, and I basically was their director of training. I put together their 757 ground school, trained them in the simulator, taught them the ground school down in Georgetown, Guyana. And then we were up at Northwest doing the simulators up there. And then I'd fly the airplane, line check, with the expats to and from New York down to Guyana. So the interesting happened while I'm out at Northwest Airlines territory using their simulators, is everyone said, hey, you got to put an application, Okay, so I stuck in an application and didn't think about it again. And then I'm in New York flying between to and from, and the guys at Tower Air said, hey, you need to come and work for us. So I ended up getting a job at Tower Air flying the right seat on a 747. Wow. And then one day I heard, I was getting ready to upgrade. I'm thinking I'm going to upgrade really quick in 6 months. And then they said, no, there's going to be a furlough. And apparently the owner would furlough everyone around the holidays so they didn't have to pay them. And they would furlough them just before we'd go out and fly the Hajj. And so they would furlough you for 2 months so you were still legal to come back. They just didn't want to pay everyone for 2 months. And so during that period of time, lo and behold, Northwest Airlines calls me up. And they called me up out of the blue because remember that captain I gave a shout out for, Bo Corby, who taught me how to fly a 727 all those years earlier? He was a captain at Northwest. Okay. And he had been Republican. He had moved his way on and merged with Northwest. So now he's at Northwest, and he was always bugging me, hey, Karlene, come work for us. Yeah, okay, thank you. But I never took the time to go update I put an application in that one time. But, I loved every job I was working at. I loved what I was doing. My days off were not looking for another job. My time off was with family. So I really never pushed it. And so one day he happened to be in the office because he knew they were hiring, and he goes in and says, hey, do you know Karlene Petitt? So they pulled out that really old, handwritten, penciled in, how many hours do you have? I kind of guessed, at the time, because I wasn't an opportunity to really fill it out. And precisely, but I just filled one to get in the slot. And so he says, oh no, she's got a 747 type rating, 75, 76. She's flying for Tower. And so because he went in and said that, he calls me up and says, hey, Karlene, update your application. And I said, okay, but I didn't. They called me anyway. And now I'm torn. Do I go to Northwest or I upgrade to captain? I'm like torn. And then I found out they were furloughing at Tower. And because of that, I went over to Northwest, got hired. And then after I accepted that job, one of the chief pilots convinced the owner of Tower that he should not be furloughing anyone this year because he's going to lose all his pilots because all the airlines were hiring. So they offered me my job back, and I said, I can come back and work for a month, but then I have to go to Northwest. And they said, okay. So that's what I did. And so because I had all the teaching experience and 747 experience, I ended up becoming a 747 instructor, the flight engineer, I should say second officer, instructor. So I do the line and the simulator. So between the two, and wrote training programs and stuff for them because I'd written those for down at Guyana when I put their program together. And then this is my message to all you young pilots out there. Always ask for what you want because you might just get it. So back in 1997, when I was January 97, they had these little paper cards that you put your dream, what airplane you want, what position. And back in 1997, it was just paper at the time. So I filled it out. 747 captain, block holder, 747 reserve. I did all the wide body captain's position. And the one square left was second officer on the 747. Well, that's what I got. Then they made me an instructor while I was still on probation. But then all these years later, one of the chief pilots called me up and to congratulate me. And I said, for what? I said, you got the next 747 400 first officer bid. It was because 10 years earlier, I had put it on a piece of paper. I wanted it. And everyone thought I was, crazy. What are you doing that for? I can't get it. But I ended up doing that. So then I got typed on the 400 and then Northwest merged. And I got since then I flew the 330, the 777, 350, and just before we started talking today, I am back studying the A330 again because I am changing airplanes one more time.
One more time. Always room for one more change.
Yeah, I feel like I'm taking a step back. It's kind of funny. I love the A350. It's absolutely the most brilliant.
Yeah.
Technologically advanced, makes sense, stable. I can't say anything negative about it other than it's a computer and computers break, but so does everything else. But you could have every computer in that airplane not working and you can still fly it.
Yeah.
It's the coolest airplane I've ever flown, and it's so stable. I absolutely love it. So now I feel like studying the 330, which is supposed to be advanced, I feel like I've gone from a 747-400 back to a 727. So I'm like,
Wow.
I'm going, oh no, I'm going backwards again.
So the 330 that you're obviously going back to, is it like the standard one or is it the Neo?
It's a standard. I might be flying. It might be Neo. I'm not sure in the future, but it's the 200, 300 right now. So yeah.
Okay.
It's the one I'm not studying. Let's just say I'm not studying Neo right now.
Yeah.
I'm just studying generic.
Yeah.
And technically, I'm not even supposed to be studying because I don't start training till August. But I have this. Basically, I was working on my PhD, and I truly believe and definitively prove that the level of understanding of your aircraft really is it impacts your performance level. And so I'm a studier, and I study early, and I'm gathering. And thankfully, the one thing about aviation community, everybody's so awesome out there that they give you manuals, they give you study guides, they create something, they give it to you and say, here's something. So you get a lot of resources so you can really figure out the plane, because the plane is the plane, different airlines may have different procedures, but the systems and everything are basically the same.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wonderful. So, I mean, it sounds to me like you've had a bit of a sort of a roller coaster sort of career path to sort of where you're at now, sort of thing. By going through all these different airlines and obviously these different airplanes and.
Yeah, and you know what? I smile at that when you say roller coaster, because isn't that the truth? Some people love roller coasters; they're the most thrilling, exciting thing they've ever done, and some people can't stand them. They get sick, and it scares them to death, so they won't even try for it. And you know what? That's the same thing with my career. People go, either they're going, "Oh, wow, that's such a cool career," or they're going, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I had a really bad time. you couldn't hold a job,"
Oh, wow.
Just before we get on to
That's...
more questions and stuff, we'll just say hello to a few people that have joined us as well. So we've got we've got Mark Barnard, who says, "Hi guys, woo whoosh."
Woo, Mark.
That's one for Jer. Good evening to you. We've also got Manchester Airport Spotter. So good evening to you, and Paul Maskell. Paul Maskell says hello everyone. So hello to you,
nice one.
As well. Now we've got a question from Ayush Pranav, and I've been reading it, and I'm trying to sort of make sense of it. It says, "Can a person from middle class family dream of flying?"
Absolutely. Okay, now can they dream of flying or achieve flying? Anybody can have dreams. It doesn't matter where you're at, but absolutely you can. It's just going to take work, and I came from a middle class family. I was out basically saving money, paying for flying, and I would say I came from middle class. In today's world, it's expensive, but you just have to get creative. And if you want it, you can do it, because a lot of it is really studying. Go get the books and study at home. But if you have a passion and the aptitude to do it, go out to the local airport. There's people out there who just love to share their passion. So you can basically turn into an airport bum and go out and fuel airplanes and work at an FBO and start meeting people, and they'll get you in the sky and get you flying to build those hours, because the hours are really what counts. What's going to get you, as needed. Not so much overseas. In the U.S., we've got requirement for hours, 1,500, or if you go to a university that lowers it. But I think in Europe, you can get a job 250, 300 hours. So, and a lot of the airlines now are looking at they're starting to do the ab initio training. So they are going to start training pilots from zero experience and see if they can do it.
That's something for
it's absolutely doable.
Definitely something for those that are sort of looking on the outside in and wanting to maybe try and get into that sort of thing. I think you've probably just given them a little bit of an insight, really, to a bit of a push for that sort of urge to go and do it. So it's a good incentive to have.
I get emails quite often and people say, I want to be a pilot. Will you sponsor me and give me money? And and you laugh that people do this and they don't understand. It's even scholarships. When there's a lot of aviation scholarships out there, like the 99s, they're so wonderful. They're giving scholarships, but one of the greatest challenges with it, and even ISA, the International Society of Women Pilots, they give a lot of scholarship, but the challenge is, who do you give it to, and will they succeed? Because people are donating money, and that money just doesn't grow on trees. It's out there to be used, and you don't want to. The worst thing that you could do as an organization is give a scholarship to somebody who doesn't use it, and just they start and because it takes it away from somebody else. So the criteria to get a scholarship, you look at, is this person working? Are they volunteering? What have they done in their life? You look at, because you want to have success. And it's kind of like getting into graduate school. When I went back to school all these years later to go get my PhD, and I had to take the testing to get in there, and I was like right at average. I was a little bit high in math or English, and a little bit under math, but I averaged out to just the minimum to get in. But I got in, and because they had the baseline of everything I've done in my life, and they want to know, will you succeed? We want you to succeed. Yeah. Okay. So just asking people for money, there's no foundation that, you got to go out and prove it. You got to go out and prove that you're willing to work and do multiple jobs if that's what it takes. And you can. Absolutely you can make it. There's one young man actually, it was probably 2 weeks ago on my blog that he wanted to be a pilot. And then he didn't have the money to fly. And so he gave up. He went and got to college, learned to be I think he got in the investment field. And then he got his career and got his job where he earned enough money. And now he's going back to teaching himself to fly. He just had to put a little pause on it because there was not money there, but he came back to it, which is pretty cool. Because a lot of people change their mind. They go, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go earn money. But then they never come back. He really did have the passion that once he could financially do it, he could, come back. And he did, which is really amazing. He's soaring through.
Excellent. So, I think if you aim high, anything's achievable. So, very
exactly,
very,
Tom. Now
very
you said
it. Got a couple of questions in the chat. We've got one from Manchester Airport Spotter who asks what your favourite airport to fly into is.
Wow.
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm going to say SeaTac, Seattle Tacoma, because that's the one I'm coming home to.
Nothing beats coming home.
That's kind of a cheat. Yeah, at each of the airports have a different bit of fun to them, but I have to say, I'd probably say flying into Guam. I liked it. There's an approach where you had to, come over the hill, and I did it in the A330. That was fun years ago. Yeah, because then you could watch the automation. I think there's a hill out there that planes would run into in the dark because they didn't see it, but. Yeah, I love going into Guam. And actually, the albeit favorite was in the old Hong Kong airport.
Kai Tak. Wow.
Yes. That was
Wow.
cool because I did that in a 747, literally with the winds, crosswind, you're coming in there sideways, angled in, and you're out the nose of your airplane. There are ladies doing their laundry, hanging it on their balcony. It's just, yeah, that was pretty
Wow.
cool.
Wow.
That must be that
Wow.
must be really surreal to sort of go.
Yeah.
Because we had a couple of weeks ago, we had a former British Airways 747 captain, and she said the same thing. Like flying into Kai Tak was so surreal that it was just you're going over these building tops at such a low altitude and stuff, and you can actually you see things happening that you probably normally wouldn't on a regular approach. So did you enjoy the old Kai Tak experience? Were you nervous about it every time you went in there, or was it a case of sort of feeling comfortable and going, yeah, I could do that?
Yeah, no, the first time going in there was a little surreal would be a good word, but it felt comfortable. It was just kind of weird.
Yeah.
So it's like thinking, but you really don't when you're flying the airplane, you're really not focusing on that. You're focusing on flying the airplane. So, it is kind of, that's just out there, this weird surreal thing while you're flying the airplane in there. So
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, actually, I've got a really cool, probably 14 by 18 picture hanging on my wall, and it's 747-400 Northwest coming in, and it's down below the you see all the buildings are higher than this airplane coming in, and they'd taken a picture of this, and I was actually in the cockpit. I wasn't flying it. I wasn't on that aircraft type rated at that time in the 400. But I was in there because I was commuting in to fly the last freighter out of that airport, and it was the last 400 into that airport, and before they shut it down. And so somebody at the company had taken a picture, and I have a great, huge blow up of it. It's really cool. So
amazing.
Amazing. Yeah. That is amazing. Karlene, now I know on the approach into Kai Tak Airport itself, you're dealing with a sharp turn coming in, really, ain't you? And you notice the checkerboard then as you're doing that turn. What was it like though? Like as you were getting closer and closer to the runway, and you had the airplane had to straighten up really quick for the touchdown. Was that frightening now, or was it comfortable?
No, it was comfortable. It's the winds get blowing in there pretty because of the mountains and the hills. But that big old 747, it maneuvers really nice. It's kind of, don't tell anyone this, but it's kind of like flying a big 172.
All right.
Yeah, it's a nice big airplane, and it kicks out. It's easy to do a crosswind landing in that. So, yeah, it's a little bit different than with the Airbus, trying to, because it's conventional and you know exactly with your rudders and your ailerons and what you're doing and what needs to be done. Then you get on but I never flew the Airbus in there. The first time I got in an Airbus, it's has roll rate demand, not a, it's a fly-by-wire roll rate demand, not actually direct control for banking like you're normal to. So switching from a generic Boeing to the Airbus with crosswinds is a little bit more, is a little bit until you get used to flying, a little bit more of a challenge. So I would be interesting I would have a different answer if I had been flying my A330 in there for the first time.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. No, I tell you now, I used to love watching videos on YouTube of the old Kai Tak Airport, and you'd see people on the ground looking up at the airplanes going in over the buildings, and you'd see that real sharp turn as they're going in over the buildings. And I'd often say to myself, Jesus Christ, how scary that'd be.
I think I'd be more frightened of being that woman hanging the laundry, seeing that airplane pointing at me than anything.
True.
Fantastic.
Oh, wow.
A couple more questions
fantastic.
Couple more questions in the chat, which we'll get to now. We've got Manchester Airport Spotter again saying, "What's the most dangerous airport that you've flown into?"
Oh goodness, let me think. Most dangerous. Probably Charles de Gaulle when we had a brand new controller. Saying when we were trying to get a different runway because the wind shear that the airplane just before us just got, and we saw the thunderstorm out there, and she asked us, "Are you sure you just don't want to give it a try?" Yeah, that was so. Actually, it wasn't the airport; it was just that moment. Let's see, probably the most dangerous airport I've flown in. I don't think I've really flown in too many dangerous airports. Some of them can get, with the weather and stuff, can get a little squirrely, but yeah, I haven't flown. Well, let me think. Yeah, because I haven't flown too much down in South America. I think some of those airports can be,
Yeah.
can be dangerous. And like flying down into like to Ghana, and there's a lot of airspace, flying black. It just depends on the controllers and stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't say any of them dangerous. They're all safe.
Well, on the topic of dangerous airports, Ayush Pranav has asked if you ever dreamed to fly into Lukla.
A dream to fly into where?
Yeah, Lukla in Nepal.
You know what? That actually has not been on one of my dreams. But it would be pretty cool to do it.
You want to be able to sort of tick
honestly,
it off.
Honestly, I hadn't even thought about it. So yeah.
Well, that answers that one then.
Well, we could put it on my bucket list.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Yeah, you probably wonder. Do you want to know what's at the top of my bucket list?
Go on.
Probably. Maybe I shouldn't say this in public. I don't know. No, I want to go to the World Poker Tournament, or the World Poker Tournament, and play poker. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's not really aviation related, but it could be, because when you win, you have enough money to go buy yourself an airplane. So,
well, as we were on about earlier, dream big. Dream big, and anything is achievable.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
I just have to figure out what beats what, and then once I figure that out, I'm there.
Brilliant. So keep the questions coming in for Karlene, and we'll keep reading them out as and when we get the chance to.
Now,
go on, Joe.
Okay, Karlene, I have a nice, interesting question now for you. How did you get into writing your books?
Oh, yeah. So it's something that, I've always wanted to do. And I bet you could ask everyone who says, oh, yeah, one day I'm going to write a book, because it kind of sounds like it's a fun thing to do. It's not really that fun. It's a lot of work. But I was out with a hip replacement. And it's one, so I always wanted to write a book, and I was out with a hip replacement, and somebody they kept telling me, if you want to write, you should go to the Hawaii Writers Conference. You need to go to a conference and get the skills and go network and stuff. Yeah. I just never had time. And then when I went out with this hip replacement and I wasn't flying, I thought, you know what? I'm going to make the time and do it. And so I went and did it and learned how to, everything to do with this, plotting and structure and, the whole deal on marketing and the whole deal on this. So I went, I loved it. I love the writing and I like the editing phase the best when you get to craft it. You start crafting the story, you get it out there and start crafting, but it does take a lot of work. I'd recommend, so if you want to write a book, how you do it is you wake up every day at 3 hours earlier than everyone else when nobody's awake, and you just sit down and put something on paper. And probably Stephen King's book was the best thing the book that was on writing. Stephen King wrote a book called, I believe it's just called On Writing. And he said, write for the garbage can. Don't edit. Just write for the garbage can. And then once you do that, just keep writing and you'll get the whole story out. And now you go back and you fix it. So, yeah, but that's how it really, I've always wanted to, but that's what pushed me is now I had the time to go to that conference.
Wicked.
And
go on.
Sorry, Tom. I was just about to say I often thought to myself as well, Karlene. I often said, what would it be like just to sit down? Like I know I probably could actually read write up a book about my own lifestyle, how I grew up and how I got my passion to go into plane spotting and to become an ad geek or whatever they call it, to go out to different airports and plane spot and and to name out so many different airplanes, like from the time I was a 10-year-old kid up to where I am now. Of course, with everything going on, I haven't been at an airport, I'd say, in nearly a year and almost 5 months now. But I'm looking forward to getting back out in the field and getting back into a routine again. As I say.
Yeah, I imagine it's,
so are you going to write a book about? Are you going to write a book about all that?
Do you know something? I'm thinking strong about it. Yeah. I'd love to actually type up how I got into the aviation and everything like that. And like wonderful good friends like Tom has taught me a lot, and other friends that are vivid plane spotters and things like that. And I'd love to be able to just sit down like yourself. Like you've wrote a few books yourself, and be lovely to actually be able to publicize a book and to state what I've done in my entire lifetime.
Right. So the only way to do it is just start writing. Just get up every day and put something on paper.
Yeah.
It's kind of like exercise. People say, oh, I don't have time right now. If you just get out and do 10 minutes, then your 10 minutes, you get into the groove and you go 20 or 30. Writing's the same way. If you get up and say, I'm just going to write for 30 minutes, you get in the flow and you end up writing for 2 hours.
Why not? Now, in the introduction to you that I made to before you, I'll go again, shall I? In the introduction of adding you to the episode here, I mentioned that the books were aviation thrillers. Would you say that's the right way that you're sort of going for, or would you say it's completely different to what I've sort of interpreted it as?
Well, yeah, actually I've got more than the thrillers, because I do have a series of thrillers, and they're kind of tough because they're almost, thriller might not be the right name because they're not blood and gore and strip, sometimes a traditional thriller, but then there's a little bit of mystery in some of them, and some of them are turning into maybe historical fiction to some level. But I also have a motivation book called Flight to Success, Be the Captain of Your Life. And that is just a compilation of, each letter is like dealing with fear, listening and learning, identity. And it's kind of a overall life, how to achieve anything, but I did it with a flight theme. So it's kind of like a motivation, inspiration book with stories of mine and others and stories of others within this book. So that would be my nonfiction. And then I did I Am Awesome, ABCs of Me, being me, and my middle daughter illustrated it with help of my granddaughter. And so it's a little kid's ABC book, and with non-traditional little poems for non-traditional jobs. And then when I finished my PhD, I wrote a book called Normalization of Deviance, and that was based on my dissertation and the data. So, but then going to the thrillers, the whole series of thrillers, they're all industry related. They're kind of things that, like the first novel, Flight for Control. That's the one that I went and started on when I went to that writers conference. Yeah. And probably that one's the R-rated one. I tell all the kids you can't read it till you're 23. When I first came out, they said, I was speaking at a high school, I can hardly wait to read your book, Karlene. And all of a sudden my mouth dropped open. I go, no, you cannot read it till you're 23. Because I had forgotten it, but I was peer pressured into putting sex into it, simply because one of our exercises was we had to write something that made us extremely write something that was uncomfortable. They said, if you write safe, that, if you write for your mom, and because you're never going to let your mom know anything bad that's going on in your head or anything abnormal. And they said, write what you would feel uncomfortable writing. And so there was harming a child and writing a sex scene were my two discomfort things. And I was no way going to write about harming a child. Just not going to do it. So I had to write the sex scene. And then everyone in my class is like, oh, that's so good. You have to put it in. So I call my first book my peer pressure book. But it was really about industry issues. It's around, they were talking about cutting back the flight hours and pensions were being lost and airlines were being shut down and merged. And so that's where it all started. And then I took my characters into the next one where the old airline merged with the new airline. And that has a lot of flight scenes like the with Airbus and A330 and stuff. And it's about training issues. So they all are completely aviation themed. And it's just which in the whole industry. And at the end of the day, it's going to tie together because I've been writing one step ahead of what's been happening in the industry. My first book I wrote about, basically it was a pilot who was a psychotic pilot who intentionally flew an airplane into the ground. And guess what? Then German wings happened. And then I'm writing about some Airbus issue in the thing, and Air France happens. And so it's just kind of paralleling real life, let's just put it that way. So, but they've been really fun to write, and I've got my next novel that is about 90% complete with the first draft, and I just, I'm wearing a nurse's hat right now, and I'm studying new airplanes, and so there's just been a lot going on, so it's kind of been placed on hold a little bit. So,
one to look out for them,
but.
Wow, that's one to look out for. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. And then there's going to be, and the funny thing is every time something happens in the industry or just in life, I start plotting. I see something weird that happened. I go, that'd be a good plot point in the book.
Yeah.
So actually, in a book that I'm 90% finished with, we have COVID in this book. And why?
Oh, wow.
And we have the MAX crashes. We have why the we have a new alternative subplot of really what happened with the MAX. And then one of my books, it starts out with when the Malaysia flight disappeared, what really happened. So I did a prologue of those events, but how I'd fictionalize this is you get to go inside the airplane and you get to see what really happened.
Right. Okay.
So so did it really happen? No, the event happened. The aircraft disappeared, and we don't know why. But that's when I take the fiction and put in my theory of what I think happened, and then I get to have creative license in that manner. So it's pretty fun.
It sounds fascinating.
It is fascinating. Now the thing is, it's very strange how the airplane actually disappeared, or really when you think of it. I keep thinking about that Malaysian plane all the time. I've even had nightmares about it a couple of times. 1 minute it's flying and then the next minute it's gone, as if off the face of the earth altogether.
Yeah. I personally think it was hijacked. I don't think that captain. Yeah, I don't think that captain. He loved aviation, and if you're gonna, there's too many opportunities for it to dump into the ocean that he could have. If you're flying the airplane, you don't need to get in a fight with the other pilot and fly it up to altitude and back down, and it's just too many things that. If you're up there, you have ability to just shut everything down at the perfect moment. So I don't think he did that, and he loved aviation, and I don't think that was the deal. But
God.
one day we'll find out.
I'm sure we will, and hopefully it won't be late. It'll be soon, and it'll all be put to rest once and for all. Like, because and then it's to say, like, it's actually good. I was saying it to Tom there. Like, it's good to see the 737 Max now starting to get back into the air now again. Like, after being grounded for how long? How long has the Max been grounded, Tom?
Was it something like 2 years? Or just shy of 2 years?
Yeah, roughly.
Has it been?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be, wouldn't it? It's just, yes, God. Anyway, I suppose we're
Yeah,
running
you
on.
know what? I'm trying to remember which one of. Have you guys recognized the name John Nance? He's written dozens of books, had a couple movies. He's an ABC news correspondent when accidents happen, and I'm trying to remember which book it was. But he has, or maybe it's his new one that I read. But he has a scene in there that he makes a commercial airliner disappear.
Oh.
And whenever writers write stuff, I always pick it apart and go, no, that couldn't happen. That couldn't happen. This is why. But it's fiction, so it's fiction. You got to have a writer's license. But when the manner in which he did this, and I'm trying to think as I read it, or maybe I listened to it, because I listened to a couple of those old books, but the manner in which he did this, I'm going, now that would work. That would make an airplane disappear.
Mm.
So yeah, wow. If I figure out which one it is, I'll let you guys know. But how he did it, I thought, well, I'll be darned, that really could work. I think what he did is he had, they had somebody on the airplane to do it, but they had another ghost airplane underneath. The ghost airplane pick up the transponder code, cut the other transponder code, then the airplane underneath it flew off to destination, and these guys dropped down, and so they broke apart. But now the airplane, and then they had it blow up. That's what it was. They had this airplane blow up, so they thought the airplane had blown up, but it wasn't. It was on the ground safely somewhere else.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
We don't just bring you aviation chat; we bring you conspiracy theories as well.
Absolutely. And this one I didn't even write. John Nance wrote it. So yeah, you know what? Actually, it's kind of interesting, because I know there's people out there go, oh, I never read fiction. I only read nonfiction. Well, I'll tell you what, nonfiction is quite often more fiction than fiction, because it's just based on your perspective. We all know that there could be my perspective, your perspective, and the truth. So even the nonfiction is not necessarily true. But I've learned that if you read a pilot's novel, or an attorney's, or a surgeon, and they're writing about their industry, the things that they put in there, that they're sinister plots, you go look into it, and they really do happen. So I think writers are I think people who are professionals in their industry, and something's not right, or something's going on, or it's a problem, they start thinking, how do we solve it? How do we expose it? How can we tell people? And they just bring it out in their writing. So
yeah,
definitely not as much fiction.
Try and get your
not as much fiction. Yeah, not as much fiction as we think these days. So.
Yeah, mind you, what's real nowadays,
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I was thinking, it's because what can you say on the internet? And if you say it, people believe it, And so they're having this big thing about they're trying to get everyone to get vaccinated for the COVID vaccine. And I thought all we need to do is have some really beautiful person go on and, a famous person say, oh, ever since I got vaccinated, my skin is softer, or I lost 10 pounds. Everyone's going to go take it because they want to lose 10 pounds. It's like, even if it wasn't true, they would do it.
Well,
I got so much smarter taking my COVID shot.
I can prevent it by drinking bleach.
Yeah.
That's right.
I don't know. I don't know.
That's brilliant.
But just staying on the topic of your books, of course. Do you have a particular one that is a favourite of yours that you've written, that you've sort of sat and wrote it, and you've sort of gone, actually, this is probably my best one?
Oh gosh, they're all just a little bit different. I'm going to have to say I love my first book because it was a first. It was a labor of love. It was a learning process. There's a lot of things I learned in it, and I did in it. But it kind of sets the story. But then again, I really like Flight for Sanity. That one's kind of fun too. And then in the Flight for Sanity, actually, which is probably a really good statement for people who are like, especially now in the COVID times, and a lot of depression, a lot of mental health issues, a lot of people losing jobs, not flying. Probably the best line that I put in that book, which was could be applied to everyone, is when my female pilot was she was faced losing her job forever. Okay, and her girlfriend was sitting there with her, and what she told her was, you may lose your job and you may never fly again, but your life is not over. It's just going to be different. Okay. So, it's like, and then if you read Flight for Sanity, you would know this character, and actually in all the books, Darby Bradshaw is my character, and she is just loves aviation, loves flying. It's her life. She's not married. She's married to the sky. And so for her to get her wings clipped and unjustly be grounded, this is a huge deal to her. It's just not like, oh, it's another job. And I started thinking about that now when there's so many people out there that their airlines are shutting down and they're furloughing, and it's really sad. I wish I could tell everybody, if you love what you're doing, whether it's flying or anything, and it's taken away from you by now, just taken, your life isn't over. It's just going to be different. Really good message for everyone to just know that. In my I think it's my Flight for Safety book. Is it that one? Or maybe it's one of these books. Yeah, I think it might be Flight for Safety. There's a scene in there where my characters, training tips. So she's going through training. She's going to upgrade to captain, and they're just, and her first officer is really weak. He's really struggling, but they're out to get her, and they're going to try and fail her in training. And actually, the event that I put in there is a real actual check ride of a female pilot going through a check ride and the games that they played. Okay. Everything in it from every event and the manner in which it was done is a real life simulator check trying to get this female pilot. Okay. So, and I got the whole story. So I put it in the book. I made it my character story. So this is how sometimes I take truth and fiction and put it in there. But in this book, even though that check ride isn't, going against her, up until that point, her first officer is really struggling. And I've seen a lot of pilots, being an instructor myself, struggle with, how do we learn? How do we remember all this stuff and procedures? So I put in there, I told Darby, my character, actually gives training tips on how to study in this book. So people will have emailed me and said, hey, can you give me, I go, here, and I just copy and paste pages out of the book and send it to them. Say, here, this is what you need to do. So that one's really fun. So which is the favorite? They all have something a little bit different in them. So yeah, I think the best one is going to be the next one, though.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, Flight for Justice. We all want justice, don't we?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Definitely.
So
yeah, totally agree with you on that one, Karlene. Yeah. Now, sorry, Karlene, you were going to say something there?
No, that's fine. I was going to tell you the title of the next book, but I thought, maybe I better not.
All right, okay.
We're going to leave that one for a surprise.
Keep everyone in suspense.
Yes, something surprises are an absolute good thing. Now, Karlene, I have an interesting question for you. With the historical planes that you've flown in the past, did you do you like the aircraft of the modern days? Do you find them easier or harder given the technology in them?
Oh, they're actually easier. They really have reduced workload, is what they're supposed to have done. But the understanding what they're doing is, and here this is the tough thing, because in the olden days, these old we'll compare 727. We had to know if you're a molecular air and you went to the engine, where did you end up? And we had to know the whole fuel system and electrical system and all the buses, and you had to draw basically the electrical system for your oral. And we've totally transitioned from that on those old school airplanes to just most airlines are now just given electronic tests. And the problem with electronic test is you go, I know B is not right, but A or C, I'll guess that one, and you might get it right, but you really don't know. And it really doesn't assess your level of understanding. Now, it's really, we're doing home training programs. You teach yourself these airplanes. If you really don't have a foundation of learning, like I have a really good, strong background on teaching. So I know what I need to know and how to study it and stuff, but that's not the case for everybody. And so the new modern airplanes, they're easier to fly. They're more, they reduce the workload greatly. But I believe since they've shortened the training footprint and making everybody teach themselves, that it's the lack of understanding of what you really need to know. But the airplanes are very protected and they save you. So easier to fly. If we had the same training that we had on the 727, if we had that same ability to go to ground school and learn what we learned on that airplane, on this airplane, I think there'd be way more understanding. But it's just, modern day airplanes need more learning, let's put it that way. Now, can you slip through the cracks and go and manage the airplane? Yeah, you can. And yeah, procedures are going to come up and tell you what to do, but I don't know. I think we need more learning, not less, but they're easier to fly. Yeah. But if you learn old school and you learn how hydraulics, everything works, and now you're coming to an airplane where they're just saying, push the button, what does this light do? And you just have to memorize facts. That can throw somebody off. And that's why I take it upon myself to really go online, find the systems. And because if I fully understand what it's doing, then boom, I got it. Then I get it,
Yeah, yeah. Was the 727 now when you flew that one now? Would you feel the weight at the back due to the fact that the three engines were at down near the tail, like the two on the tail, and then you had the middle tail engine then as well, of course, built in. When you were doing the rotation, would you feel that weight as you're leaving the ground like?
No, you really didn't feel that. But when you, not really. Right. It was just, it was heavy. So like we did, I think it was a manual reversion. So now you have to use the manual trim and the weight, So there's a lot of things I remember having to have a lot of strength.
Right.
Yeah, but the funny thing is a friend of mine, when she got hired at Braniff, they said that she had to have a strength test. And they said, would you be willing to take a strength test? Because they wanted to see if she could, physically manage this. Because I remember at times when we were doing in training engine failures, I literally had to lock my leg in there to lock it to be able to hold the strength of it. So instead of having a bent knee, I just lock it in there to hold it. And there's some lose your hydraulics and it was a handful. You did have to have some strength. But her response to that was, she said, why? Are the women required to carry the plane across the country while the men fly it?
Wow.
Yeah, and then I have to tell you, in the olden days, you can say that kind of stuff at interviews, and they would laugh because the pilots were the ones that were interviewing you, and they would think you're funny, and they would hire you. Yeah. I'm telling all the young kids, if you go to an interview today, they don't have that sense of humor what they once had. So. Yeah.
Don't try that at home, kids.
Exactly. Yeah. but that 727, boy, it was really. I remember coming and I was brand new on the airplane, and I was coming in. I think we were going into Minnesota, somewhere in Minneapolis, maybe. And I remember it was at dark, and there's lights are everywhere, and I'm coming in, and I'm looking for the airport, and the captain says, "You got it?" And all of a sudden, I go, "Yeah." And what went through my mind is, without saying it, I saw the airport instantly. It's like, oh shoot, I can't make it. And he sits there, and because I'm thinking I'm too fast, we're going to have to, do hold or do something to slow down and get it, because we're 250 knots, and I just didn't have that experience on it. And he says, "Oh, you got it made." And all he said is that. I go, "Okay." So I just started configuring and pulling that down. Man, that airplane would slow down and go down and get configured just nice.
Wow.
It really would. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was very, even though she was a little old tank, really fun airplane to fly, and you could do 250 knots over the marker and get it configured and get it landed. So,
brilliant. Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And then of course, the 737-200. You I think you flew that for a time as well, didn't you?
I actually have no flight. Well, I have 2 flight hours on the 737, but I instructed in the simulator on the 100 to 2. Yeah, the 100, 200, 300, and then when Alaska Airlines got their 700s, I did their transition training on that for them through my other company. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. So, excellent. Well, I instructed on it quite a bit, and I just hadn't gone out and flown it, but so. Yeah.
God, well, do you know something? I'm absolutely delighted though to see that there's an odd 727 still flying. Like I know there's a couple of private companies still have them, and then there's a couple of cargo ones. I don't know if FedEx now still have their ones, but I know there is a private one, and it's a very regular visitor to Shannon now every now and again. So it's nice to know that there is a couple of the variants around. But as time goes on, all the classical aircraft are disappearing anywhere, left, right, and center as we get into the newer generation as well.
Yeah, I haven't seen these 727s in the U.S. Most of the airports are noise restricted, and so they're just kind of don't let them fly. I know they did a hush kit on some of them, but. Yeah, but what a great airplane that was. Yeah, really fortunate to have flown it.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you have some good fond memories of my. Well, I know I certainly have great fond memories of seeing them at my local airport in Dublin. When I was going up spotting, I counted about 6 or 7 of them that used to come into my local airport. So it was always an honor to see them, And you do get to miss the old aircraft. How about you, Tom? I'd say you'd miss them a bit now yourself as well, because you used to love the old stuff as well yourself, didn't you?
As I said, I've said it on a few episodes already. I think you had more sort of variety of aircraft, especially if you were spotting it, to sort of what it is now. Like as much as high tech and as modern as the planes are now, and of course they have to be. I think I would probably take the classic era about 100 times over the sort of what we got now sort of thing, because I think there's a bit more of a variety sort of thing. So, but that's my preference because I quite like the older stuff. But yes.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm the same as yourself, Tom. I love the classical era. That's why I tend to if I'm watching videos on YouTube, I tend to try and find the old classical era compared to what we're used to now. But look, times have changed. We just have to go with the future, accept it, and just get on with it. So. Anyway, Tom, I'll let you have the next question. I just have to pop off just for a second, but while you're having the next question, I shall be back in a jiffy.
All right, cheers then. No, that's fine. So we've got a couple more questions, and then what we'll do is we'll Well,
should we trick him and go hide when he comes back? No.
while he's gone, we'll just end the stream.
Hey, listen, I'm portable on my headphones. I have the Bluetooth, so the headphones come with me. So I'm still with you. I'm not gone.
Well, as long as you're not going to the toilet, that's the main thing. We don't want to hear that.
Oh no. Oh, I love it.
but no. We got a couple more questions, and then what we'll do is we'll start to sort of wrap this up. But
Okay.
so obviously at the beginning we mentioned about how you sort of got into the industry. Was it sort of is it something that's run throughout the family? Like have you had like family members that have sort of wanted to get into the aviation industry, or have been in the aviation industry, or is it just yourself?
Just myself at the time when I started, but I have one of my sisters is a flight attendant for Alaska, and I've got a niece who is a flight attendant for Alaska. And my dad flew little airplanes, so when I started flying, that's when I found out that my parents were divorced when I was quite young. And so then I found out that my dad liked to fly, and he was quite tall, so he didn't meet the requirement to go into the military and fly because he couldn't fit in the cockpit because he was too tall to fly in the jets. Yeah. So my dad had a little airplane, which he didn't live where I lived, but I did have one opportunity, actually two, to go fly with him. And one time I thought we were going to die. Actually, it was because I just was showing interest in this, and I had my, I don't know if I had my private license yet, and he was flying this little airplane, and I went out and met with them, and then we were flying it into, I want to say, Yakima, and he got into the weather, and we iced up. And I saw the airspeed indicator just going down, 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 down. And I remember I'll just never forget, his demeanor completely changed. And I'm just sitting there calmly looking at this thinking, okay, we're going to die. And I was just this young girl thinking this, and obviously we didn't. We got into warmer air and got back. But I could, just something by his demeanor and this was not a comfort zone for him to get into that icing conditions like that. Yeah. And we started descending, and I mean, but it was just, I hope that actually when I do die, I have that same calmness about me, because it was just like, okay. And it wasn't a panic. It wasn't like some bad reaction, but yeah, so my dad did fly little airplanes a little bit, and and like I said, then my sister became a flight attendant. My niece is a flight attendant. So other than that, nobody in aviation. Actually, my eldest sister, when I was probably about 10 years old, and she was about 3 years older, she was babysitting the little kids across the street. And she came running home and said, because the little boy over there, the dad apparently was an airline pilot, and his son had lost his fuselage. And he was crying because he didn't have his fuselage. And I'll never forget, my sister came home and she says, "What is a fuselage?" so this little kid, this little 2-year-old is crying because he doesn't have his fuselage. And the babysitter doesn't even know what in the heck it is. And he doesn't have the vocabulary skills large enough to tell her what a fuselage is. He just knows he lost it. So. Yeah, that was pretty funny. But other than that, that's about it. And I had my mom's friend landed a helicopter in her yard once, and they couldn't get it back out, so they had to come and tow it out. But those are my little touches of aviation in my life.
Absolutely wonderful. Brilliant. That's absolutely wonderful. So this, yes. Wow.
And then finally, I know we sort of touched upon this earlier. I've just seen we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes already. I can't believe how quick it's gone already. Like, I didn't think we were on for that long already, but hour and 20 minutes. But I know we touched upon this earlier. But sort of as a sort of a lasting sort of message, what would you say to anybody listening that might be thinking about wanting to get into the industry?
Yeah, if anyone wants to do anything, I just say, if you have the passion for it, do it. Don't let anybody tell you no. If I would have listened to no, you can't do it for whatever reason, and believed them, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so you have to have the strength. And the interesting thing is, we all think that it's kind of parallels with writing with writing. Okay, every novel has a protagonist, and they have some antagonist who's going to come and destroy their world, and the protagonist wins. And usually there's one protagonist and one antagonist. So you got your hero and you got your villains. And the interesting thing in real life is we are the heroes of our own story. Okay. And there's going to be all these people out there who are going to tell you, no, you're not smart enough. You don't have money. You can't do it. They're going to try and take you down for whatever reason. And, so not only do you have to overcome those people, but every one of us has a little bit of an antagonist inside ourselves, because we're our own worst critics. I'm not smart enough. I can't do it. Conquer your own demons and tell yourself you can. Other people, just, if you don't like what they say, just don't listen to them. Tell them to go away. Tell them you're not going to play a game with them anymore and kick them out of your bedroom. But you really have to conquer yourself. You got to conquer your own demons and really believe that you can and know you can, because I think we are our own worst enemies quite often.
I think so.
We have that self-doubt.
Yeah. Totally. I totally agree. Sometimes, sometimes you can get someone that kind of tries to rule you sometimes as well, and you kind of have to say to them, well, enough is enough now. You just do your own thing, and you hope for the best that things is going to work out in the end as well. That's the way I was taught anyway, many times.
Well, and if you want to be a pilot, here's the bottom line. Part of the challenges of becoming a pilot are going to create your skills to be a pilot. Because as a pilot, you're not going to have your, flight attendant say, we're going to crash and die. And you go, oh yeah, you're right, and let it happen. Or you're not going to, you're going to be flying your airplane no matter what. You're never going to give up and throw up your hands and say, I can't do this in an airplane. Why would you do that in your life? Start developing the skill set of, okay, I got this challenge, whether it's a thunderstorm and you just lost an engine and your, fuel's not transferring, challenge in the sky, or you got your challenge on the ground. How am I going to get money for school, and how am I going to build my flight hours? Okay. We're all going to face challenges in our life. It's how we deal with them, and don't give up and get creative. Sometimes the answers are right before you. You just don't see it. You just got to start thinking outside the box sometimes for how to make things work.
Well,
and know that.
Sorry, Karlene. Keep
that's
going.
fine.
No,
I know that you're. Well, I was going to say, know that you're not only the only person who feels the way you do, who thinks the way you do, and there's other people like you out there. And so with the internet, you could go out and reach out to people. Hey, I want to be a pilot. And I'm trying to figure out how to build flight hours. Anybody else out there like me? And start connecting with others. And then once you get together, it happens. There's a young man that I met many, many years ago, and he got his, earned his money, took out loans, went to school, got his private license, and got his instructor license. And then somebody wanted to, he said, and then they were going to pay me, I think, like $13 an hour to be an instructor. He said, I would never pay my bills like that. So what he did is he said, okay, I can instruct. I have the ability. I'm not willing to work for that wage for that price. What can I do? So he went out and found people who wanted to learn how to fly, professionals. And he convinced 3 people to buy into 1/3 of an airplane. He would be the 4th ownership in that airplane, and he would teach them all how to fly. So now he owns 1/4 of an airplane, knows how to fly. I think like 3 years later, he owns 6 airplanes.
Wow.
But that's what he did, because he wanted to do it. So he thought outside the box on how to make this work. And he got all his flight time, and he was doing this with the intent to go be a pilot. I don't think he ever did. I think he just loves what he's doing and owns airplanes now, and is
Definitely.
keeping his
Well,
passion alive that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I always said when I was growing up, I'd love to be a pilot, and myself, like, I used to always say to my friends in school, God, something, my dream is to be a pilot. But then I was thinking to myself, there's a lot of responsibility, because you're up on the flight deck. You're responsible for all the passengers behind you. You're responsible for the crew that's with you and everything. And I said it to my mother and my father. I said, what would I be like if I became a pilot? And my mum said to me, God, she said, I'd say you'd be an outstanding officer, or whatever. And since you love airplanes, she says, so much, you go chasing them nearly all the time to the airport, and that, she said, it's something you should take up, like, but sure, I never really actually got to fulfill that dream, but I still love going. My passion is still for aircraft, though, and I love the enthusiasm that goes with it and everything like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's nice.
What about you, Tom? Did you ever have a passion to become a pilot yourself?
I think anybody who was young, who got into aviation one way or another,
Yeah.
I think, like I said, anybody that was young would have had that dream to become a pilot, because it's kind of one of the cool jobs and stuff. And people are
Yeah.
like, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a pilot, I want to do this, I want to do that. But I think I'm a bit like you, I suppose, in terms of, I think the responsibility. I think maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just I don't have it in me to be able to do it. But I mean, I have like 8 or 9 sort of training hours under me on the Cessna 172, 182. 182.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember
so I have a few
remember
hours
you
in that,
saying
so I can carry on with
Yeah.
that and refresh it and stuff. But I mean, I think, like I said, most people would have had that dream to be a pilot when they were younger. It's I think people just look at the pilots and then they go, "Oh, that's really cool. I'd love to be able to fly something as big as that," and and things like that. So yeah, I'm pretty much the same. Really. Like
the thing is, I was saying to Tom, Karlene, a few weeks ago, like on one of our shows, that and of course, me and Tom, we do communicate quite regularly as well. And I was telling him that I had the privilege when I was a kid to actually be on the jump seat of a 747 Classic. It would have been the 100 series 747, and I was with 2 trainee pilots. They were doing a fly around the country of Ireland on this new airplane that Aer Lingus had received, and I went flying around the country with them, and I couldn't believe it that I was actually sitting in the jump seat of a Boeing 747-100 Classic aircraft. Now, very old, but I have to say, a lovely airplane. And sure, we call them the queens of the skies, because they are definitely the queens of the skies, the 747, and it always will be. Because since I grew, like me and Tom, like we grew up with the 747, like from its flight, like years ago and whatever, like, so good memories of that as well, like. Yeah.
What a great opportunity. That's one of the saddest outcomes since September 11th, is not to let kids come up and see that anymore and experience that. That's what's, they're, how are we going to get pilots? Well, we need to motivate them. And the FAA in the US doesn't allow us to even take videos. But boy, if we could put a GoPro camera and videotape the arrivals and the sunrise and the just incredible things we see up there, it really would inspire the kids to say, "Oh, I want to go do that too."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is one of those unfortunate situations that that's happened. So it is a bit of a shame, really.
Yeah.
But yes, we're going to begin to wrap things up now. As we are sort of 90 minutes in now, so we'll start to wrap everything up. But before we do, we'll take this time to, as we do every episode, give a few shout outs to people that we know or companies, etc. That or even friends or family that we want to give shout outs to. And normally we go with a guest first, so we're going to put you on the spot, Karlene.
Okay, well, since I cannot see who everybody is on listening right now, but you did tell me Jeremy was there. I want to give a shout out to Jeremy. He's an incredible individual, and thanks for joining us, Jeremy. I will come see you soon. And I'd also like to give a shout out to all the mothers out there for Mother's Day. Because it is probably one of the most difficult, underappreciated 24/7 jobs there really is. And they don't get pats on the back very often. So they get to do all the, the tough stuff. But anyway, so happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there.
Absolutely beautiful.
Wonderful. Anybody else you might want to shout out while you're at it, or is that it for now?
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
Okay, I could sit here and shout. I could shout out for everybody.
Shout out as many people as you like. You know what else
I want to shout out for? I really want to give a shout out to everybody on Twitter. This is going to sound dumb, but I have to tell you, within the last month, I've been in and out of the hospital with my husband a couple of times, and it was not going well. The doctor even told me at one point, a prayer would not be a bad idea right now. And then he leaves, and then they poke their head out. We're having problems. We're supposed to be an hour and a half. We're not. And so then I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting in this room waiting, and I could have sat there and catastrophized and thought all the negative things. Instead, I put a little message out on Twitter and said, hey, here's what's going on. Prayers needed. I want to give a shout out to every single person on Twitter who sent a prayer, sent a kindness, sent me a heart. It was so... not only did they work because everything turned out great, but it was really, it was more appreciated than anyone can know. It was to all those people who take the time to care and say something. Thank you all.
Fantastic. And of course, it is good news that he's doing all right now. So obviously the prayers and that did work. So thank God for that.
Yeah. Thank God it's right. And Karlene, as I say, I'm one now that actually loves to keep everybody in my prayers. So usually what I do sometimes, I'll go into my local church, and I will light a few candles for everybody close to me. So the next time I'm in lighting a candle, I will light a candle especially for you and himself, and he'll always be kept in my prayers each time, because I normally do it for my own mum and dad who I lost within a couple of years of each other, and I always keep them close to my heart. And the one thing, and I've said it to Tom as well a few times, the one thing is that if a little robin ever comes close to you, that's a gift from heaven. My mum used to always tell me that many times, that if a little robin comes up to you, it's a little gift from above.
Oh, that's very sweet. And thank you so much.
You're very welcome. You're very, very welcome. And it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you on this wonderful, amazing show as well. And to the man himself, the host, my good friend and good buddy, Tom Whittle, who I love like a brother. He's like a brother to me. Yes.
You're making me blush now. It's fine.
You're welcome, Tom.
Thank you guys both. Thank you both for inviting me on your show. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor.
You're welcome.
Definitely our pleasure. And I mean, if you've enjoyed it this evening, we'd love to have you back at some point.
Oh, I'd love to. We'll definitely be back in 6 years?
I'll put it in the diary.
We'll be back for my retirement, right?
I'll stick it in the diary for 6 years' time.
We'll keep that in the diary anyway. I suppose, hey Tom, I suppose I better do my couple of shout outs and then let you wrap.
Yeah, go on, because you've probably got a list of people, so go on.
Oh, you know me too well now. So yes, so I'm going to give a big shout out to my two special friends. I have I spend a bit of time with them when I can, and that's Rebecca Follen and Mark Follen and baby Luke and Rebecca's wonderful mother and father and brother. Big shout out to the whole of their family. To my family, of course, I better not forget them. To my friend Paul Kelly and his wonderful family. Who have helped out so much, and I'm so delighted to be able to help people out when they need me. And to all my other Facebook friends, Killian Martin, of course, who joined us on the chat there. Big shout out to him and to his friend Kate O'Connor as well. So that's really and of course a shout out to Karlene, of course, and to you, of course, Tom, as I always do, and a big shout out to my good old self, the co-host.
Nothing quite like giving yourself a shout out.
Yes. Oh yes.
That's right.
And another important thing I always nearly flipping forget it every time, and that's a shout out to all our frontline workers out there that are working so hard through everything that's going on at the moment. A shout out to them. Keep them safe, and to all our air crews that are doing such wonderful jobs, like flying cargo back and forth to all corners of the world with the pandemic and everything like that. So think of everybody that's out there, and God keep them all safe and keep us all safe as well, of course.
Yes, I'll give a few shout outs as well, and then we'll leave it there. So
yeah.
First of all, I'll echo what Jer said. I'll give a shout out to Karlene, who's given us her time this evening. So thank you very much for that. It's been absolutely wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
We've also give a shout out to all the frontline workers across the world who have continuously given 100% into keeping everybody safe and well throughout this very difficult period. So big shout out to everyone there. At the same time, a big shout out to and I did this last week, so I'm going to do this again this week, to a very special person who continues to be my rock. I won't mention their name, but they know who they are, for continually keeping me sane throughout the entire week with my mental health issues. So big shout out to them, and a big shout out to everybody that's been watching this evening. So
yes, exactly. It's
definitely
nice one, Tom.
Definitely been a lot of fun.
Oh, it has. I've enjoyed it. Really have.
Definitely been a lot of fun. So so next week we'll announce next week's guest for May the 16th. Next week is going to be, let's say, chaotic, but in a good way. If you thought one Jer was bad enough, we're going to have two. I say this because we've got YouTube star Matt Cochran joining us. He lives in Atlanta and does spotting videos, very much in the style of the way that Jer does his Facebook lives every time that he is at an airport, shouting at aircraft and providing excellent commentary.
Yeah.
So the wonderful Matt Cochran will be with us next week, and that should be a lot of fun. So keep an eye out for that over on our socials, which is Twitter or Instagram. And of course, if you've enjoyed the stream this evening, leave a thumbs up and give us a subscribe if you are new here. But that is going to do it for us this evening. So we're going to say peace out, and we're gonna leave. So Karlene, do you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Yep. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for being here, and you guys have a wonderful night over there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Carolina.
Jer, do you want to say bye?
I'll talk to you guys soon.
Oh, yes, definitely, 100%.
Oh, 100%. Yes, Tom. a very goodbye to each and everyone that joined in on the chat. Thank you so very much for a few of the shout outs there to Mark Bernard, of course. Big shout out to you, my good friend in Isham, as I say. Always appreciate a shout out, and of course, as I said, to Killian as well for being there, and to you, Karlene. It's been an absolute honour chatting to you, and of course, to yourself, Tom. I bid you goodbye, and I'll see you on the other side shortly.
Definitely. And from me, we'll call it here. So continue to look after yourselves. Continue to stay safe, and we'll do this all again right here next week. So until then, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.